Hey, I hope you all are doing well. If you're up to speed, then you know that last night was a huge night for the boxing community as Mike Tyson went up against Roy Jones Jr. In an exhibition match that was seen by millions of people all around the world. Now, this was a fight, according to, I believe, Roy, this was a fight that was supposed to happen some decades ago, but because of politics and all the people involved and different promoters, it kind of fell through. But last night it actually happened. And what an amazing, exciting fight it was. So the purpose of this video, very quickly, is to talk about some of the key takeaways and lessons I learned from watching both that fight, as well as a fight that happened just prior on that same night, which was between Nate Robinson, a former NBA player and huge star, versus Jake Paul, who's a big YouTube celebrity. I think he has over 10 million, maybe even 20 million subscribers. So there was a couple lessons that I've gleaned from watching those fights, and I'm so excited to share those with you. Now, the first thing I'll say, having watched both fights in their entirety about 2 times now, all 4 fighters really came to give it their all, particularly Nate Robinson and Jake Paul. They didn't seem to me to want to lean on the excuse of, hey, this is my first time in the ring, my second time in the ring, I only had a year to prep. No, they came to put it all on the line. So much respect to them, as well as Tyson and Roy. Now, what we also know is that both fights ended severely differently, with Nate Robinson, unfortunately, being knocked out in the second round. And this really speaks to my first lesson, which is not all outcomes are transferable. I repeat that. Not all outcomes are transferable. Let me explain. If you would have asked me at any point leading up to the fight, even the night of, who did I think would win, I would have said Nate Robinson. I'm sure if I would have asked you or anyone you knew who would win, they'd say Nate Robinson. If I would have asked people to bet money on the fight, I'm sure overwhelmingly it'd be Nate Robinson. And if you look at the memes circulating through social media as I make this video right now, you can tell that the public's leaning, or their expectations for the fight, was leaning towards Nate Robinson winning. And that's a fair assumption. Nate Robinson is a professional athlete from the NBA. Right, I was reading a stat the other day that said less than 1% of basketball players actually get drafted into the NBA. I'll admit something to you, I'm a casual NBA fan, and I knew about Nate Robinson. He was a little guy that made a big splash, an amazing reputation, versus Jake Paul, respectfully, who's kind of a journeyman athlete, right? Kind of getting his feet wet, but much respect to him as well. So not all outcomes are transferable. All because someone can dominate in one arena, even an athletic one, doesn't mean you can take them and put them in a different one and expect the same outcome. It's not wise. And such is with life, right? Whether you're someone who's looking to that promotion that you've been eyeing for maybe a year or so, or looking to pivot into something more entrepreneurial, or even looking towards higher education, grad school, it's important to understand the nuances of that new arena. Don't expect to just be able to jump into it and have the same outcome. You have to understand those nuances, you have to respect those nuances, and you have to prepare for those nuances. And a lack of the right preparation can severely affect the outcome. So I thought that was an amazing example that we can take in all aspects of our lives moving forward. Now, the second lesson that I learned comes from the Mike Tyson-Roy Jones fight, which is always be willing to adapt. Always be willing to adapt. During this fight, Roy was throwing a particular punch that I've never seen him throw before, which he called a no-look jab. And I thought that was very unique, right? Because he developed his punch, it seems, just for Mike, number one, to keep him at bay, and then number 2, so he wouldn't be able to telegraph where he was coming from. And I thought it was amazing that someone with such experience, such know-how, continues to innovate and continues to up his game, right? Someone of that type of caliber could easily rest on their laurels to say, hey, I know what I gotta do. But he really went into this fight with an open mind, really went into his training with an open mind, and that punch really worked wonders throughout the fight. And I think that was one of the more clean shots that he landed on Mike during the fight. Same respect goes to Mike, who at the end of the fight, and I think he said this a couple times during the post-fight interviews, he said, look, I already know how to knock people out. People know that. But the one thing that I really trained for was going the distance, right? He said, I'm an explosive guy. I usually put everything into the first to third round, but this time I wanted to be prepared and conditioned to go all 8, and that's exactly what he did. So respect to both fighters for that. And it was really inspiring to see, again, two living legends continue to up their game, to continue to innovate. And I think it was inspiring, or should be inspiring, to all of us. And the third and final lesson also comes from the Mike and Roy fight, which is the greats are great for a reason. Again, Mike is 54, Roy is 51, and the stress that they put their bodies through, the pain, the anguish they put their bodies through to prep for this fight is something that amazed everyone that watched it that night. Leading up to the fight, you'd always hear people say, even other boxers say, hey, I couldn't do that to myself at 50-something. That's just too much. It's not worth it. I don't want to go through that pain again. Another training camp? No way. And I think that, hearing that commentary from everyday people, but also other professionals, really opened my mind up to the fact that, hey, there's a reason why these athletes are working at the level that they're working at, that are renowned and respected the way they are, because they're willing to go all the way. They are obsessed with the craft. They're obsessed with getting better. They're obsessed with the challenge. They're not trying to just go peacefully, into the comforts of life, right? They're always looking for some type of mountain to climb. And that within itself, even as I speak now, and I'm getting the chills, even that's so inspiring. If they get the call of duty, just a reason, and a challenge big enough, great enough, inspiring enough, they're not afraid to get out of bed and hit a training camp. And I thought that was awesome. So the greats are great for a reason, and that's why, right? There's a great quote that I forget who said this. Was it Ford? I think he said, those who say they can and those who say they can't are usually right. And I think that really speaks to this fight, right? It really speaks to Roy Jones Jr., really speaks to Mike Tyson. They are the two out of the bunch that said we can, and they did. So what an amazing two fights, three amazing lessons from those fights. And I hope this video and those fights brought you as much value as it brought me. If you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section. And I look forward to hearing from you.